practically, most of the water absorbed by plants is ultimately lost into the atmosphere. Only a small fraction of water is utilized in plants' development and metabolic processes. This loss of water is in the form of water vapor, and it takes place or it is lost from the stomatal aperture, which is a aerial part of the plant. So transpiration is defined as the loss of water in the form of vapor from the aerial parts of the plants. This phenomena is different from evaporation in various ways. First and foremost, evaporation is a physical process and it occurs in a space or free surface. Even in the process of evaporation, epidermis or stomatal apertures are not involved. So there is no requirement for any living tissue to be involved in the process of evaporation. And in the process of evaporation, there are not many forces which are involved, like no addition cohesion pressure is required. There is no requirement for capillarity or root pressure or osmotic pressure. These all are not required for the process of transpiration. So for the process of evaporation. So that's why the process of evaporation is quite easy as compared to the process of transpiration. Now, we will be discussing in details about the entire process of transpiration and how is it taking place. If you see this diagram, that how is water made available for the process of transpiration, the route of water movement remains the same. First, water is moving. There are two ways by which it is shown in this diagram. One is this path, whereas the second path is starting from here. So, anyways, we will focus on both the parts at the same time. Soil has presence of water, and from the soil water is absorbed by the root hair, outer epidermal cell of the root hair, by the process of imbibition. Once imbibition has occurred, water has moved inside the dead part of the root hair cell, or just the cell wall of the root hair. After that, the water imbibes in and it moves further inside through all the layers of the plant, through the cortex, then through at first it will move through the epidermis, then the cortex, then endodermis. After, while passing through the endodermis, it will encounter the Casparian strip, then through the pericycle it will reach towards the xylem. So the types of movement which will be taking place will be apoplastic and symplastic movement. Symplastic movement is time consuming, whereas the apoplastic movement is quick. Symplastic movement takes place through the living tissue, and the apoplastic movement, it takes place through the dead parts or dead tissue, like the cell wall. Just the outer covering of the cell is capable of apoplastic movement. As soon as the plant, or as soon as it reaches this apoplastic pathway, it reaches the Casparian strip, this movement is altered or it is stopped, and then after again the symplastic movement comes into play. Now, once the water has reached the xylem, then again the upward pull in the form of root pressure or in the form of capillary action, even in the form of adhesion and cohesion, all of these together acts and pulls the water till the leaves. Once the water is pulled till the leaves, then through the process of diffusion, water is lost to the atmosphere. So this is the basic idea about how the water is made available for the process of transpiration from the roots of the plants till the leaves. And in the leaf also, the spongy parenchyma will be the area where the diffusion will be actually taking place. Now there are various types of transpiration. The first type is the stomatal transpiration. The stomatal transpiration is the loss of water from the aerial part of the plant. Now this aerial plant, we are already aware that in around 80 to 90% of the water lost is with the help of this stomatal transpiration. Now, whenever the loss of water is taking place, the loss is taking place when through the spongy parenchyma, because spongy parenchyma has free space. This free space has thin layer of water. After the xylem has released the water droplet, that water droplet is diffused evenly in the spongy parenchyma and through the lower epidermal stomatal cells, or stomatal pores I should say, the loss of water takes place. Now, why is water lost only from the lower epidermis and not from the upper epidermis? What is lost from both the surfaces, from the lower epidermis as well as from the upper epidermis, but it is more prominent from the lower epidermis because the stomatal pores are present in uh, way like they are present in much more percentage in the lower epidermal area as compared to the upper epidermis. The reason remains the same, because the sunlight will be directly falling on the upper epidermis, and at that time the loss of water will be very fast. So in order to avoid that, the nature has made the leaves in such a way so that the lower epidermis has more amount of stomatal pores and less diffusion of water can occur, but still this diffusion is way too much. Next is cuticular transpiration. The waxy covering of the leaf on which the water rests is the cuticle, and this is an impermeable covering which is quite thicker in xerophytes, and even in normal plants also it is quite thicker, and it does not absorb water. It just holds the water over it like a plastic membrane, and water is lost even through this cuticle. Next type of cuticle is the uppermost, just above the upper epidermis lies the cuticle. So it is the uppermost waxy coated layer which is impermeable, and it also has certain pores by which there will be release of water in the form of transpiration. Lenticular transpiration takes place through the lenticels of fruits and woody stems, although to much less extent, but some of the times this is quite evident in older plants. You can see all these bark and the crevices or the pores which have been developed on the bark of the plant. From every pore there will be loss of water, and it is known as lenticular transpiration. So we have an idea about three different types of transpiration by now. The mechanism of stomatal transpiration. The same theory lies in this. The opening and closing of stomata, it depends on the turgor pressure. What is turgor pressure? The vacuolar or cell sap pressure which is developed in the guard cells when there is continuous absorption of water from the surrounding uh, cells or surrounding epidermal cells. Now, because of the withdrawing of water from the surrounding cells, the stomatal, if you remember the structure of stomata, there were presence of epidermal cells. Each of the epidermal cells has water present within it. Now, the stomatal pore is as such that this stomatal pore remains closed unless the sunlight falls over it and photosynthesis begins. So, when it is closed at that time, the turgor pressure is very low within these guard cells and they are in flaccid condition. But as soon as the sunlight starts falling on the guard cells, the photosynthesis begins, and the withdrawing of water from the epidermal cells, these all are epidermal cells, from these cells the water is withdrawn inside this guard cell, and the stomatal pore tends to open. After the opening of the stomatal pore, or this opening of stomatal pore occurs because of this absorption of water, or this absorption of water from the nearby cells by the process of osmosis. Now, when the guard cells have become turgid, that results in the opening of stomatal pore, and thus the transpiration occurs, that is loss of water occurs to the stomatal pore. Now, this regulation of stomatal opening occurs by the sugar concentration hypothesis. I hope you all remember the sugar hypothesis. There is one more accepted theory, that is the potassium ion concentration theory. Anyways, we will just discuss this which is mentioned in your book. So according to the sugar concentration theory, as soon as the as soon as a day or in the morning, I should say, there are variety of external and internal stimulus which affects the opening and closing of stomata. But this stomatal pore opening is a very important phenomena. So it requires the light or dark condition. It is also dependent on the carbon dioxide concentration, water supply, pH of the cell sap, and various other factors. In most of the cases, when water supply is adequate, the stomata tend to open during the daytime in response to the sunlight and close at night. This opening and closing of stomata is operated by the turgor pressure. But not only the turgor pressure, there are various other things also which participate in this process. One of it is this theory, and according to this theory, what happens is, as soon as like during the process of photosynthesis in the daylight, carbon dioxide enters inside the guard cells, and because of the entry of carbon dioxide inside the guard cells, the sugar is formed. Because of the formation of sugar, the concentration of sugar tends to increase inside the guard cells. So suppose at first there were no sugar molecules in the guard cells, but after 5 minutes there have been 15 molecules of sugar. Now the concentration is hypertonic in the guard cells. So because of hypertonic solution in the guard cells, the nearby cells, this guard cell will be capable of withdrawing water from the nearby epidermal cells, and due to endoosmosis, the opening of the stomatal pore will take place. So reverse happens during the night. During the night, the osmotic pressure will be decreased, and as because no photosynthesis is occurring, no sugar is formed in the guard cells, and as a result the guard cells will shrink up. So this idea leads towards opening and closing of stomata in the day and night depending on the presence or formation of sugar during the daytime. And the same theory is explained in the form of a diagram over here. You have to start from 1. During photosynthesis, light falls and carbon dioxide concentration decreases in the cell because carbon dioxide is getting utilized in the dark reaction for formation of sugar. And because of decreased concentration of carbon dioxide, the pH tends to increase in pH. It means the entire environment of the cell becomes acidic. This increased pH helps in conversion of starch to sugar, and increased cell sap concentration is administered. After the cell sap, or when the cell sap concentration increases, the nearby epidermal cells, they all contribute for the endoosmosis of water, and water is drawn in by the process of endoosmosis inside the guard cells from the nearby epidermal cells, and this causes increased turgor pressure and the stomata tends to open. Now, as soon as in the dark condition, the cessation or the stoppage of photosynthesis occurs, the concentration of carbon dioxide increases in the cell of the guard cells, and this decreases the pH, and the conversion of sugar to starch takes place. So there is no more sugar present. It has been already converted into polymerized form of starch and is in storage form. This leads to a decrease in the cell sap concentration and exoosmosis of water. So the water is sent outwards from the guard cells, leading towards flaccidity of the guard cells and closure of the stomatal pore. And it is definitely taking place because of decrease in the turgor pressure. So this is just a summary by which we can understand the entire process of sugar starch hypothesis and the opening and closing of stomata depending on this sugar starch sugar hypothesis. There are various adaptations which we have seen in the plants for the process of transpiration. One of them is shrunken stomata. The meaning of shrunken stomata is that the stomata generally they are present in such a way that there is a pore present. But in case of shrunken stomata, the stomata are not of normal shape. They are shrunken. The inside pore is very small. You can see over here the pore is very small. So this is the case of shrunken stomata. We see that shrunken stomata is only present in case of xerophytic plants. Not all the plants show the presence of shrunken stomata. Leaves are reduced to spines. This is seen in cactus and various other plants, xerophytic plants, where in order to stop the process of transpiration, we see that the spines have been developed in most of the plants, and there is less place or less pores present in the plant. The cuticle, the uppermost layer of the epidermis, upper epidermis, tends to become more thicker, and because of thicker upper epidermis, less chances of transpiration can be there, can be seen. Rolled or twisted leaves, some of the times the leaves they tend to roll themselves, or there is certain rolling which is seen in case of some of the plants, so that less chances are there for stomatal transpiration. Even wilting is a process by which we can stop, or by which the plants they stop the process of transpiration. Sometimes the leaves are very narrow so that the surface area is reduced, and since the surface area will be reduced, there will be less chance of loss of water. Some of the plants they do not open their stomata at all during the daytime. This is seen in most of the plants like sugarcane and all. They all do not open their leaves sorry open their stomata during the day, and because of this there is less loss of water by the process of transpiration. Some of the plants they lower the number of leaves, very small number of leaves are present, like acacia. If you have seen, they have very less number of leaves present, and the entire plant has presence of lot of spines over it. So with the help of these two features, the rate of transpiration is maintained in case of acacia. Succulent leaves, it means thicker leaves, like the cactus or aloe vera. You have seen that inside there is presence of some pulp, or the sap is in the form of cell sap is present in the form of certain paste kind of thicker area, and that is a succulent leaf. Aloe vera, or you can think about the cactus, is a very good example of succulent leaves. Water storage in case of all these xerophytic plants is way much higher, and because of this we see that there is very less transpiration seen in case of most of the xerophytic or most of the plants. Importance of transpiration is there are various reasons for transpiration, and minimum of these four regions are something which you should discuss or you should learn properly. First is ascent of sap. Ascent of sap means movement of water from the roots till the leaves by the process of with the help of various forces like the root pressure, osmotic pressure, even with the help of diffusion and imbibition. The entire process takes place. So ascent of sap, in simple terms, movement of water from the roots till the leaves, and in accordance with the root pressure, osmotic pressure, imbibition, osmosis, cohesion, addition of water molecules, and capillarity. All these processes together contribute towards the ascent of sap, and this is very important. Even transpiration plays a very important role for ascent of sap. Removal of excess water. Our The plant body requires only 3 to 5% of the water what it has absorbed. So what about the rest water which is getting absorbed? It has to be removed out, and that removal is taking place with the help of transpiration. Otherwise the entire cell sap concentration will decrease, and there will be and this decreased concentration of cell sap will not be favorable for the plant. That's why it is important that excess water is removed off from the plant's body. Transport of salt and minerals. Most of the solutes, they cannot move inside the plant's body without a liquid medium. This liquid medium is provided with the help of this water. Water acts as a medium for transportation of salts and minerals in the entire plant body with the help of phloem. The cooling effect is the most important effect which we can see because of the presence of this plants. Now plants, they help in removal of water, and because of removal of water, we we can encounter the decrease in the temperature of the environment. Now this decrease in the temperature of the environment, it is directly proportional to the amount of water which is lost, and it is also, this water loss is also contributing towards the towards controlling the environmental temperature. Even it is adding towards the water cycle. So this cooling effect is quite similar to the same effect which happens when we sweat. When we sweat and you do not switch on the fan for some time, you will start feeling cold. The reason is the latent heat of energy is helping in this process. So this is the idea about cooling effect, and these are few important things or important phenomena which takes place because of transpiration. So these are few questions which are to be done, and I hope you could understand whatever we discussed today.